Hi everyone, welcome to today's session on managing linked models. Today we'll be going through the essentials of managing your Revit files when linked together, which includes a little bit about the strategy of linking files, linking a model, or the actual practice of linking a model, the manage links dialog, link settings, display of linked elements, and managing performance with Worksets. Okay, first off, we're going to have a look at a little bit of a look at the strategy for linking. By and large, the linking strategy is to separate your buildings from each other and your site from your buildings. This allows for us to maneuver the building files around the site quite readily, particularly for greenfield sites, or change their RLs and elevation and still maintain their documentation. Another benefit is for allowing each building file to have its own levels, and it also assists with the performance of your entire project because there's a natural split between all of the files, meaning they could be half as large as they could be if they're all amalgamated together. So this is the general linking strategy for files. When it comes to something like an apartment building, we tend to break it up into, again, site and building, but within that building file, we'll have groups for each apartment type. This just makes for easier editing of each apartment without having to open and close different links, which can be quite painful. Also good for scheduling purposes, so you can have the schedules all reading within the same file. Scrolling down, we have a look at the townhouse linking strategy. It's obviously a lot more complicated. Now you can take this as far as you like, but this is an example of how you could reduce the repetition between files. So for instance, you might have an interior that's common between townhouse types. You could do that as an interiors file, an exterior file A, exterior file B, and you could have combinations of the two, which then go through to create lots. And then those lots, which are essentially what we're calling buildings, go onto the site file, and then they can be manipulated or moved or duplicated as required. Quite complicated. You can remove some of these steps if you like. But I guess when you start removing steps, say the interior file didn't exist, you'd have to redocument the interior for both type A and B. And that's at your discretion whether that's worthwhile or not. Okay, now that we're across the strategy, let's have a look at actually linking models together. So I'm just in a building here. We've got a mixed use precinct, and this is our produce store, which we're going to set up linking for. Now, we've documented this project smack bang in the middle of our elevation markers here, north, east, southwest, right in the middle. So these are looking at it. Now, that's just modeled orthogonally to the page. Now, we're going to bring in a site file, and we're going to acquire coordinates from that. So let's bring in our site file first through the Insert tab over to Link Revit. And we're going to specify our site file here. Now we have a few options for bringing this in. We can bring it in center to center, origin to origin, by shared coordinates, or project base point. Those are auto. That means that the link will just deposit itself into the model. And manual will mean that you will be placing it after you bring it in. By and large, we don't tend to use the manual ones. The main ones that we use is origin to origin or by shared coordinates. Usually just let it come in by default until shared coordinates are set up. So I'm just going to bring it in origin to origin, and we're going to see where that lands. Okay, we've got a warning here, which states that within this link, there are other links. Now, those links are set to overlay. What that means is we're not going to see those linked elements from the link that we're bringing in. Okay, but we'll address that soon when we're looking into overlay versus attachment links. Okay, so just zooming out, I can see some site boundaries there, and there's my site file over here. My building is actually sitting underground relative to that. So if I go into, say, my south elevation, you can see that we've just documented at 0, which is great. That's what we want to do. I'm going to go into my plan, and I'm going to move my site over to my building. Okay, and we can see that the coordinates are not yet shared. So this can just be moved freely. And this site has already been coordinated with true north and MGA coordinates. So I'm going to rotate that into position, and that is now the location of my building relative to my site in plan. Now, don't forget to always move it relative to your elevation as well. You can see that the site ground is at 8 meters, 8.5. Let's just move that down. That's going to have no change as I move it. It's still going to read the same number. Whereas the ground level in this current file is still reading 0. So what we're going to do is acquire coordinates from our site. Let's go to Manage tab, Coordinates, Acquire Coordinates. And we're going to pick our site file here. Okay, and you can see that that number's been acquired. Close, done. What's also happened is that the north orientation has been acquired from that too. So if I change this view to true north, you'll actually see that that is now true north. So all of those settings should be set up within the site file. And we're doing acquire coordinates mostly because of the issues surrounding publishing coordinates back to models where others own elements in workshared files. So this is just a little bit more of a robust method, but you can publish coordinates if you're more familiar with that process. Okay, now that we've brought that in, let's have a look at the link manager and some of the settings surrounding that. So the link manager allows us to manage all of the links within our project. So let's go to the Insert tab and click on Manage Links. Okay, so here's the file that we've just brought in. We can see that status is loaded, its reference type is overlay, etc., etc. Now you can unload and reload that link from here. Unload will just obviously make that not loaded anymore. When you hit OK, that will be gone. Going back into the link manager, LK for short, that's what we've got it set up as. You can then reload from there. Okay. Now the saved path here, it's set to relative. So these two files exist within the same project folder. If I bring that down, you'll be able to see that here. Here's our project folder, site, and produce store are in the same folder. Therefore, it will not have the entire string of the folder location unless you change the path type to absolute. If you do that, you can see it's now got the entire saved path. Now I'm operating off OneDrive here, so it's actually picking up my profile name. That is going to be a problem for others. When they open up this file, they will not see this link because the saved path is absolute. So best practice is to leave that as relative. Okay. Now we've had a look at all of those settings. We'll come back to reference type in a moment. Okay. Next, we're going to go and open up the site file. So let's just close that. And we're going to go to Open, Site, Open. And we're going to now link in the produce building into our site file. We're just going to do that from 3D here. And there's our big hole for our link. So repeat the process, insert, link Revit, produce store. Now this time, because we've set up shared coordinates, we can actually pick from this by shared coordinates. So we're going to do that and click open. And because we've already set up shared coordinates, that will land exactly where it needs to land. Okay, let's have a look at our elevation here. And you can see that we have, this is our building file, and I'm just going to isolate that. It's got the RL there coming through nicely. So all of those are coordinated. Okay, next, let's go and have a look at the retail building that we have on this same site. So here's another link that's been loaded in. We've already set up shared coordinates, much the same as before. And if I select this link, you'll see a few things. We've got the name of that link, the mark, which will come in handy for visibility graphics. And we've also got additional information under edit type. If I click through to there, you can see that we can specify whether this file is room bounding or not. And the phase mapping. Now, the phase mapping determines how the phases between the two files match up. If I click on edit there, you can see that repository, existing, and new construction are all identical. So this is a pretty cookie cutter project. However, you may inherit different names for different phases. You may have phase 1, stage 2, stage 3. The idea there is to either create the same phases in the file that you're in, or set them to display based on what your phases are in your current project. Okay, so that's the mapping. It's really important to get those right. Also important to get right is the phase filters. The phase filters should be identical between the two files. We've seen that without doing so, you can get some strange graphics, particularly with demolition items and things like that. So when we're talking about phase filters, we're talking about these. You need both of these the same in all the files, including the names. Okay. Now, you'll notice that here we have this retail building, but there's actually a fit out file that's been put together, which we're not seeing. And that is because the file itself is not set to attachment within the link settings when it's brought in. Now, if we have a look here at our diagram, you can see that we've got these little words, attachment. You need to have these set as attachments in order to show in the topmost model. So you can have the lot in as an overlay, but in order to see the contents of these files within the top level file, the ones below, what we call nested links, need to be set as attachments. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to close all of this, save it first, and we're going to open up our retail building here. And we're going to set our link to be an attachment rather. So going to ground level, here it is here. This is a fit out file. It's already been coordinated. Basically, all that's happened here is we've brought in the file, the link, and we've done acquire coordinates after it's been positioned correctly. So if you had an interiors architect, they might provide a file, and that's how they would acquire coordinates to be in the same ecosystem, coordinate ecosystem. Now we're going to firstly go into our link manager, okay, and we can see here our fit out model. We're going to set it to attachment. Click OK. You won't notice anything just yet. We'll sync that up. Close the file. Open up the site. And now that that is set to attachment, that information will come back up through the food chain. As you can see here. So this file here is actually just retail building. It's not the fit out file, but it's showing through from that link. Okay, it's important to set all of your files to overlay unless required. Otherwise, what we'll end up is within that file, we might have the site file. And if that's set as attachment, that's going to come back through twice. We don't want to be seeing the site again and again because we actually are in the site or other buildings on top of each other. Okay, let's just have a closer look at the display of some of the linked elements. Okay, I'm just going to select this file here. You can see that the mark set to 2. If I make a copy of this file over to here, say there's multiple instances of this this retail building, you can see now we've got mark 5, whereas this one over here is mark 2. We can actually independently control the graphics of each of these as we desire. So I'm going to go into visibility graphics just for this view. We're going to head over to Revit links. And you can see here, you can either change the settings for all of those linked files, or if you click the little plus, you can change them independently. So you can see the name is listed there. That was the new one that I made a copy of. You could go in here and change that one. Now to change the settings, we're not going to go through them in too much detail because we've got other videos that talk about these settings. But in order to make this able to be changed, you need to go back to the Basics tab, tick on Override the settings, and then you can go into the here and, sorry, we want to go by custom. Then you can go into model categories and start making changes. Okay, after it's set to custom, of course. So if you would not to show, say, doors, click OK. That's reminder that's just on that particular file. You can see that over here, doors are all showing fine. Over here, they're now all turned off. Okay, and that's actually gone through to the linked file as well, the nested link. Okay, visibility graphics again, Revit links. This is also where you can turn off entire links or not to display within this view. Another handy setting is to be able to show elements through from a linked file. Now I'm just going to close up here. We're just not going to save. And we're going to open up the retail building. And say that we've done some documentation, or an interiors or fit out architect has done some documentation of the interiors that you would like to show through to your floor plan. Now, Revit links will not show 2D information by default. You need to pick that information to show through. So within this view, I'm just in a ground floor plan. I'm going to go into visibility graphics. Going to go to Revit links. We're going to look for that fit out model, and we're going to specify by host view. Within the basics tab, we're going to set it to by linked view. And then we're going to go and find within that file the view that we would like to draw the information out of. So you might need to open the file to go and have a look at it. But within that file, I believe it's this view here that has some 2D information. Click OK. It's now display settings by linked view for this particular view that we're in. Click OK. And you can see tags come through, dimensions, and the like. Now, it's really important not to tag and dimension linked elements. We find that quite volatile. So our advice is to tag and dimension within the file natively, and that way you won't have issues where tags and links are dropping off. Lastly, I'd just like to show you how to manage performance with Worksets. Okay, so we have a number of links here, and now that shared coordinates are set up, you could link in your produce file quite quickly. Insert, link Revit, produce store by shared coordinates. That should land in the right location, like so. Now I've got a lot of information here. So if we were to open up this file, it might take quite a while to load, particularly as the file bloats. So ideally what you want to do is you want to set each link onto their own workset. Now you can do that manually by going into the Worksets manager, creating new worksets, selecting the link and putting that link onto a workset. Or you could use add-ins such as Revit, which will do all of that automatically for all of the links. So first, I'll just select across the page. We'll select just Revit links. And then we'll run the Revit tool under links, create workset for linked element. That's done. And now you can select that link and you can see that that has been placed on a workset with the same title as the file name. And those worksets have all been created automatically. Now, if you'd like to unload something, you can simply close the workset. And additionally, I'm just going to sync up and close. You can actually pick which worksets to open before you open the file. So to do that, we'll go to Open. We'll specify the file. Next to Open, we'll click the little drop down and go Specify. Now when we click Open, it's going to prompt us with which worksets or basically which links would you like to load up. Let's just close them all because we just want to open the file really quickly and just work in the file. Click OK. That file will open up really fast because it's not trying to load all of that workset information. And it's just going to be the native elements here. And then, of course, if you'd like to bring in or turn on those links, you just go back into the Workset Manager, click on the particular workset and open it. And that will then spend the effort and processing power to load that workset, which brings back the link.